Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What are some creepy encounters you've had that you're convinced are paranormal? Please remember to like, share, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts a bunch today, and subscribe. I worked graveyard shift in a dementia ward for 4 years, and it was anything but quiet. I was working with a nurse one night when we both heard a resident say, "Excuse me." We looked around and no one was there. I checked on the resident in question, and she was fast asleep in her own room. Many of us also experienced someone whistling in the ward late at night, and one nurse even managed to catch a video of it happening. It was unnerving, to say the least. When I was a teenager, I went on a road trip from British Columbia to Saskatchewan with my aunt, my mom, and my 2-year-old cousin to visit my uncle. He and his wife lived in an older farmhouse in the prairies that were built early to mid-1800s. Not a lot of renovations done except the kitchen and bathroom, so definitely had a vibe to it. One night after dinner, my toddler cousin was playing with a recorder, the wind instrument you play in elementary school. Nothing special, just messing around as kids do. We had dessert, watched a movie, then headed upstairs to bed. My mom and I were sharing a room. We settled in for the night and chit-chatted a bit about the day, and we began to nod off when I hear a quiet melody coming from the kitchen, located below our room. I assumed it was my tired brain playing tricks on me and passed it off as nothing, and tried to fall asleep. Then I heard it again, a few distinct notes from what sounded like a recorder. My eyes flew open, and my mom and I turned to each other at the exact same moment and whispered, "Did you hear that?" We laid there wide-eyed in darkness while a few more faint notes drifted up the staircase until eventually we fell asleep. My mom and I tell the story the next morning at breakfast and speculate whether my cousin escaped from her crib for a moonlight sonata. The thing is, at this time she didn't even know how to get out of her crib, and my aunt was such a helicopter parent, there's no way she could have jumped the crib, opened the door, and made it all the way downstairs without my aunt waking up. My uncle chimes in and says in the late 1900s, a doctor and his daughter lived in this farmhouse. She contracted tuberculosis, and he had to perform an emergency tracheotomy that tragically failed. I was told there is a grave in the backyard in between those 2 trees, and points out the window. I like to think the little girl ghost was awakened by my cousin's presence in the house and wanted to try the recorder herself. The next day I was left alone in the house and kept psyching myself out and looking out the window at those 2 trees in the backyard, expecting to see something. I've had plenty, but it's the first experience that I remember best. I was 14 to 15 years old. I shared a cramped room with my younger brother. We lived in an old barn loft that was converted into a livable space. Our beds sat parallel. His, the one on the left facing into the room, was closest to the door. At the foot of the bed, about 5 feet away, and to the left was a small closet door. The door was only about 5 feet tall. I'm asleep, as is often the case in my episodes. I just kind of suddenly am aware that I'm unable to move. Breathing is difficult, like I'm drowning without my lungs filling with water, and my mind screams that I need to move to wake myself. Suddenly, I can see my room. This might sound nuts, but whenever I have an episode and this sight happens, I'm seeing through my eyelids. I can feel my eyes are shut, but I can see my surroundings. Out of the small closet door pokes a flat-brimmed hat, atop a long-haired head, then shoulders, then elbows, and a long, thin leg. This tall figure just smoothly sucks out the closet and stands in front of my bed. He just stands there. I can sort of see him sway side to side, but other than this, he's motionless. I can hear this muffled heartbeat racing in my ear. I can hear myself hyperventilating. I can hear it, but it's like I'm listening to these things underwater and still can't move. Then I hear his voice in my head. No movement. He just says, "There are people who watch from behind the walls," and he gestures to the wall behind him. The wall turns translucent red, and I see what look like deformed children in rags. They're speaking, but in whispers, and I can't understand a word. They moved around like ants. He starts laughing and still remains like a statue, and snap! I felt like a firecracker in my right ear. I shoot out of bed. I actually landed out of the bed on my feet. We didn't have carpet, just this thick plywood type crap that made every footstep sound like a stomp. My brother woke up and asked what I was doing. I just blurted out, "I tripped," and crawled back into bed. It was around 3 a.m. I stayed awake until I heard the birds outside. Then I went downstairs. Messed me up for a while. Okay, I got a couple days of shout-outs here, so I'm just going to bang them out real quick, so thank you guys. And listen, maybe you could have one too. Lucas Kimber was asking about my holiday season so far. It's been great. It's our first year in our new house, and put Christmas lights up on Thanksgiving, and so that's going well, but we're also working a lot this holiday season, but you know, it's all good, paying the bills. Willow Harper, you're 9 months pregnant. I have some friends that are New Year's Eve babies. I think that's pretty cool. Now, depending how 9 months you are, maybe you'll have one to join them. Otherwise, I hope everything's going well, and if my voice has helped you sleep, then man, what a compliment. So thank you. Amanda Lee asked about how I can read like creepy stuff and still sound like calm. Just years of practice. Like I commented on it too. That's all it is repetition. I hear people sometimes say like, "Oh, I listen to your stories and I fall asleep." I'm like, how? Stuff is like, some of it's dark, but hey, if it works, God bless. And then I got one today that really touched me from James M. Bed with a 3. I really don't know what to say by what you wrote, but I am humbled and I'm honored to have helped you and your wife in any small way. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. A lot more than you could even imagine. And Sierra Rose wanted a Darth Vader impression. I'm not good at this, but I'll be like, bad impression. Maybe if I had more time, I could have done that better, but I'm sorry, I'm in my car. I don't play any online games. I'll play some like phone stuff occasionally. And I used to play Ultima Online way back in the early 2000s. And otherwise, I'll play Fortnite once in a while with my son, but pretty terrible. So anyway, hope you guys are doing well. This was a long one, but you could be next. Talk to you guys soon. Take care. So just a brief backstory. I've experienced paranormal situations since I can remember, and not just me, but my older sister as well. First off, my sister had been seeing apparitions when she was really little and had been tormented by a little girl that would scare her, and a couple of years ago, while sightseeing in Seattle, we went into a psychic's store, and the cashier had described the exact detail on the appearance of the little girl that had been following my sister, which freaked her out. And 2, since I was little, I would have really in-depth, creepy, bizarre dreams that felt as though I had lived hundreds of other people's lives, and have seen countless different types of shadow beings that I had different names for. When I was really little, such as shadow blobs, which I believe aimlessly roam, and in harmless demon shadows, crawlers, and the weeping fog. I would break these down and explain, but I'll save that for another time, since my story doesn't revolve around these, but I just wanted to express that I grew up with paranormal experiences, and it basically was, and still is, a part of my normal daily life. This took place back when I was in early middle school, so around 13 years ago. And around this time, I had a best friend who is still my best friend to this day. I'll call her Lori. And we would go from staying at her house one week to my house the next, and on this specific week, we were staying at her house. So one odd similarity we always noticed about either of our houses was that there were certain areas of both of our houses that were unusually colder than the rest of it. And when I say unusual, I mean that it was so unusual, the first-time visitors always, without fail, would mention the temperature difference at both of our houses. At my house, it was the basement, and at Lori's house, it was her living room. At this point in time, I had already stayed the night at Laurie's house numerous times, and we would always sleep in her living room. I would always be the last one to fall asleep, since I struggled with really bad nightmares that happened almost every night, like I mentioned earlier. So I would be the only one awake to hear things fall and hit the ground in the kitchen right next to the living room, or even see things fall from the coffee table that was only a few feet away from the spot on the floor where I was laying down at the time. And not only that, I would also notice the temperature would drop, and I would get this overwhelming sense that I was being watched, to which I would cover my head with my blanket and would close my eyes and struggle trying to fall asleep. So, on this particular day, it was around late evening. Laurie and I were at her house alone, and one of our friends that lived close by had just come over. I'll call her Kara. And Laurie was telling us about this creepy plastic doll she had that had a button on its back, and when it pressed, it would sing the Ring Around the Rosie song. So I asked her where the doll was, to which she said was in her garage, which the door to the garage bordered between the living room and kitchen. So, wanting to see it, Laurie and I went into the garage while Kara, uninterested, went outside just on the other side of the garage door that was down at the time. Laurie's garage was used more like a storage space and was cluttered with boxes full of all different kinds of things, old toys, etc. And after digging for a while, we finally found the doll, which was in poor condition. It had short blonde hair and matted pigtails and a stained pink frilly dress. And as soon as Laurie pressed the button, it started in a normal little girl's voice, "Ring around the..." And at this point, its voice got deeper and started to stutter. "Rosie, pockets full of posy." I looked at Laurie horrified, who also looked back at me in complete shock. And she said, "It's never done this." And at that last sentence, it sounded faded, almost like two voices were saying the same thing in sync. "Ashes, ashes, we all fall." Before it finished the last word with a pause, the lights in the garage flickered and went out. And just before we could react, the doll roared the last word in the deep, demonic-sounding voice that still gives me chills thinking about "down." I could hear Laurie drop the doll, and we practically tripped over ourselves in the boxes around us as we ran into the pitch-black darkness to the door leading back into her house. And I remember panically screaming at Laurie in front of me, "Turn on the lights and open the door, Laurie." And Laurie yelled back, "I'm trying. The lights won't turn on, and the door won't open, it's locked." I could hear her frantically flipping the light switch up and down, as well as the door handle jiggling as she desperately tried to turn the doorknob. And in the middle of our yelling, we could hear the doll start to sing again in the demonic voice, "Ring around the rosies." At this point, we were pounding on the door and both screaming, Kara, open the door, please," repeatedly shouting Kara's name. I remember feeling like the temperature dropping drastically as well, as this overwhelming feeling of pure terror and dread, like something really bad was about to happen. And as our poundings on the door got more frantic, the door flew open with Kara on the other side of the door, staring at us in annoyance and confusion, and we pushed past her, causing her to stumble back, and I slammed the garage door and instantly locking it, and all three of us stood there in stunned silence, the only sound being Laurie and eyes labored panting when Kara yelled, "What the hell are you guys screaming about?" And Laurie and I tried to explain to her what happened. Well, we tried anyway. It was difficult at first because we were both bawling our eyes out, to which she thought we were playing a joke on her, but as we kept upsetting and insisting, she still didn't believe us. Laurie to this day still doesn't like talking about it at all. I know is the cold, and as soon as her dad got home, she made him take the doll out to the dumpster that very day. When I was a young child, I had an imaginary friend who I would sit up with at night and speak to at length. My mother would have to come in every night and tell me to go to bed, to much protest, until she said good night to my friend as well. This went on for years. I would speak to my friend, a monk, a dark-cloaked figure, who had no real features I can remember, but would sit on the end of my bed quite peacefully. This went on for so long, my mother got concerned, as I wasn't growing out of the phase and having an imaginary friend, so she had me checked from the neck up, to which I was proven to be as perfectly sane as any ordinary child. The paranormal part of this is that no one ever else saw him, until one night, one of my aunts stayed over, and I had to give up my room for her. In the dead of the night, she screamed the house awake, ran down the stairs so quick she missed a step, fell down the stairs, and near broke her ankle. Just a very nasty sprain, if I correctly recall. While waiting for her to calm down, she apparently exclaimed about a dark figure in the room with her. In the midst of all this, she refused to go back upstairs, and I was kicked from the sofa back to my room, to which a groggy me just said, "Told you, come on, Ben, time for bed," with a sense of elation of being proven sane. Later research into the house revealed we lived on the grounds of a former monastery. We moved that summer, and I never saw my friend again. Former atheist, now I just don't know. I feel like something is out there, but I don't know because I can't understand what happened to me. Brief backstory. Had a falling out with my mom. Didn't speak to each other for about 2 years. When I was a little kid, my mom would push her fingernails into my back and just scratch my back all over. It was such a calming feeling and was something I really enjoyed when I was playing upset. So, I'm sitting at home one day, playing with my dog. I sit on the couch and get this really weird feeling like sorrow and sadness. Suddenly I feel a calming nail scratch all over my back. I'm sort of freaking out, but also enjoying it, like what the hell is causing my back to feel like this? What felt like several minutes was probably 20 seconds. Snapped out of it and jumped off the couch, checked my back, and I had freaking scratch marks all over it. 30 minutes later, my sister calls me and tells me Mom has passed away at about 30-ish minutes ago. That's roughly the same time I was felt with a random bout of sorrow, and suddenly had nail scratch marks on my back. I can't explain that. I don't know what happened, and I don't understand it. Back in my teen years, I lived in an old tobacco farm in Maryland. The property was massive and sold individually. There were a few houses on this farm and a long, narrow road connecting where I lived to a quarters sack. As a kid and growing up with the older neighborhood kids, we were all very close and would teach each other about haunting and ghost sitting and whatnot. But there was the one house at the end of the road I lived on, the biggest house on the old farm that a family we'll call the Davidsons lived in. It was very old style but remodeled. We always knew it as the White House, as that's where the white farm owners lived. This was a hoax to me and my brother, we always thought. But being the wild kid I was one day, went behind the house adventuring and stumbled across a graveyard. All the headstones were very old and weirdly they were labeled Davidson, past relatives down generations. Earliest was 1830-ish. It's been about 30 years. Memory's rough. This wasn't the scary part. This is backstory. Fast forward some time and it was Christmas '92 and we had this brand new Sony camcorder. This same year, we had a new neighbor across the farm down the long dirt road. Some context down this road, there were 2 barns in one house. This was directly across from the White House, through some bushes, but was not connected via traditional road. These new neighbors were very curious and lived in the haunted house. This house was very old. I became real good friends with the new neighbor, and he had an older brother who liked ghost hunting. He would explain that they lived in the slave house, and we would explore the old barns. They had this basement, some conjuring type shit, that we would never go down. It was locked by the previous owner. We found out later it was the Davidsons, and never given a key. One night we busted it open when his parents weren't home and went and took a look. Seemed to be an old garage area, but when you walked down the wooden stairs directly to the left were 2 to 3 nooses and chains, dirt stains and old clothes all over the floor. We then ran up the stairs. A few days later, we went into the barn. This is where the paranormal stuff happened. We were always told that the orb would show on the camera if a ghost was sighted, and in the nighttime us curious teenagers used the camera to explore the barn. While taking a video, we opened and started to walk around. Hanging on the second level was 3 to 4 nooses, and chains on the sides. The nooses were swinging left and right. Then a deep, loud, I would say, scream. We turned around and ran, but kept recording. When we later looked back at the footage, we noticed multiple orbs and feet, dark outlines of male or female feet on the sides of the barn where the nooses were hanging. Family and I stayed at our vacation home one December. We got there late in the day, so we decided to only clean my parents' room, which had a massive bed in it. Could easily fit the 4 of us. We sat there watching TV, and during commercial breaks, I would rest my eyes. Well, one commercial I closed my eyes. This time I instantly fell into a nightmare. I could remember being in my house, walking around, when suddenly a dark shadow begins to engulf the room, grabbing me by my feet. At this point, I'm aware but unable to move. After a few seconds of struggling, I finally broke free, sitting up, right while the same time my brother also shot up. We looked at each other, and without saying a word, we knew whatever just happened, we both experienced it. At the time, I was in my mid-teens, and my brother was early 20s, so we were able to keep our composure. We told our parents that something tried to scare us, and they told us not to worry. I wasn't having it, as I was the one at the edge of the bed, so I told Pops to switch with me, lol. As the night went on, we began to hear footsteps coming down the stairs, a tile on the floor cracking in half, and the TV turning on and off. All the while, my dad, who played it off, was acting suspicious. I could see him trying to cover his left shoulder with a blanket, and we noticed he was leaning to the left, when he suddenly freaked out, telling whatever was there to fuck off. At this point, we were wide-eyed, because I've never seen my pops just freak out like that. He told us that he felt something pushing down on his left shoulder. Now when we go in, I no longer stay there. I go over to my grandma's, who's less than a mile away. This happened in 2002-2003. I was playing with a Ouija board, with a friend on the bunk bed in my bedroom that I shared with my little sister. My friend and I were on the top bunk playing and connected with the spirit. Being skeptical and wanting to scare ourselves, we kept asking the spirit to prove to us that they were really there. My friend bravely volunteered to put a hair tie on her outstretched finger and hang her arm out over the edge of the bunk bed. We asked the spirit to lift up the hair tie, slide it off her finger, and drop it on the ground. Whatever we were speaking to, they obliged, because this hair tie levitated off of my friend's finger and suspended itself in the air for a few seconds before sliding off of her finger and dropping to the floor. My friend did not do anything to make the hair tie act the way it did. There's no way she could have done it because we tried to replicate it afterwards. Needless to say, it really was spooky. We got the scare we were looking for. It wasn't too long after that my parents confiscated the Ouija board, and I haven't messed around with one since. Ouija boards give a new meaning to around and find out. Something came into my cabin while I was sleeping. I tell the story periodically in the hopes that someone might have information. I woke from a dead sleep to see this thing crouching down by my bedside. It was wrong, off somehow. The muzzle was strange and the limbs were oddly articulated. It sounded like it was muttering, but the tone was low and rumbling, and I couldn't make out any words. I freaked out and mashed the light switch, and it took off on all fours, left scratches in the hardwood as it bolted outside. I tell myself it was just a deer with wasting disease or something. It was too big to be any of the other local critters, and the rack of antlers should have been a giveaway. I guess it just happened to stroll into our cabin that we just happened to leave wide open. I've always wished I got a better look. I didn't sleep the rest of the night there, and we left the next morning. I didn't tell my fiancé until we got home. We had been camping outside in like a makeshift garage in one of our favorite camping spots. There was about 6 of us occupying the area, and in that moment, this paranormal moment happened. Only 2 of us were left at our camp spot. Everyone else had left to go for showers or other things, while me and my other female cousin stayed behind. It was probably around 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., so it was dark when this happened, but we were laying in our beds, talking, when in the corner of my eye, I could clearly see a little white figure standing in the distance. I stared at it for a while, still making conversation with my cousin, but then saying, "Do you see that?" Which my cousin had said, "Yes." I thought I could only see it. The figure was standing still between these like 2 poles, and even though the moon was shining, we knew it wasn't the moonlight's rays that was causing this sort of figure, because the white figure was clearly in a spot where it was darkness or where the moonlight couldn't reach. We were both just staring at the figure, but in that moment, I do not think any of us in any way felt scared. We still stared at it, making comments like, "If you come near us, we will scream," or "What happens if it suddenly appears in front of us?" Mind you, we're both paranormal believers, and I guess we were waiting to see if anything would happen. But then the figure slowly floated away into the darkness. Again, we both were just staring at the spot that figure was because we were in shock. Later on, after everyone returned, we didn't really say anything to them. I think we kind of forgot. But it was now like 2 to 3 a.m. in the morning, and all 6 of us were telling jokes, but now we were getting into the ghost stories. Right then I explained to the group what me and my cousin had seen, and I kid you not, 2 of the boys in the group were like, "Oh, was it standing over there, behind the 2 poles?" Me and my cousin and the 2 boys just stared at one another. I couldn't believe they'd seen it too. What made it more interesting was I never told them the exact spot we had seen the figure, but they had literally, in the moment, described exactly where me and my cousin had seen the figure. I asked them how they'd know where it stood. They just simply replied with, "I seen it the other night and woke him up, so I wasn't the only one to see it."